my not only my business partner, but also my husband of almost 40 years. And don't want to anger anybody, but we did meet at University of Florida in chemistry class. We had chemistry. So that's my joke. So anyway, so thrilled to be with you guys this afternoon to show you a little bit about Learning Blade and then talk a little bit about how this is available for you all within the state of Florida. Very excited to get to work in my home state. I was also born in Gainesville when my dad was in school there. Long line of Florida Gators here. But really excited also to have so many great partners and individuals that have been working with us for the last several months on kind of getting Learning Blade going within the state. And we really want to thank definitely the legislators, but also FADS, you guys are, I'm sure, are familiar with, and I'm going to share my screen and introduce our first speaker, which is David Sykes. And David, we will let you open us up.
Well, after Sheila's start there, I've got to start with a go Knowles just to balance things out. But yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I met Sheila and Dane at an event, FADS and STEM to Hub and others we collaborated on with Blue Origin. And I think it was there or right before I got there that we learned about the opportunity to collaborate with Learning Blade on providing this in the state of Florida. And so FADS was obviously ready to help facilitate getting Learning Blade out. They received an appropriation in the GAA this year and to make it available to every middle school in the state. And FADS is here to help and facilitate districts learning about Learning Blade and utilizing this free resource to help their students. And so we're here as a resource, but smart people like Sheila know a heck of a lot more about the program and how it will work for your students. So I'll let them take it from here.
Well, great. Thank you so much. And really thank you to FADS for all the work that you guys are doing for Florida and for districts across the entire state. Very lucky to have an organization like that in Florida and one that stays very, very active. So thank you so much. So I'd love to also now introduce Ned Colley. And Ned, if you want to say hello to everyone, Ned is actually our Florida State Manager, and we're very excited to have him aboard.
Thank you. And on top of the Gators and the Knowles, I have to throw in Go Canes.
Okay, we're well balanced.
So now we got the Trinity going. But I do live in Sumter County. My wife is the assistant principal at the Village Charter High School, and we're proud Sumter stakeholders as well too. We got one left coming up the system, and I'm happy to be with Learning Blade. It's a great product, a great resource, and y'all have my contact info. Anything I could do to help out, I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ned, and thank you all again for being part of today's activity. This is really for you all. So, make sure that you are definitely, participating. You feel free to put any chat that you might have, any questions that you might have in the chat. Ned will be monitoring that and we'll be providing answers along the way. You're also going to hear from a couple of our great friends here in Florida, Dr. Kathleen Scofield and Brandy Krisovich in a little bit as well. But let's just first start out by Learning Blade, as was mentioned, is now a free state-funded system for anyone in the state of Florida, any organization, any school, any post-secondary, any environment that actually works with students, so nonprofits and other agencies as well. And you can sign up for your free state-funded account, individual schools or districts, and we can work with you at learningblade.com/FL. You can also contact us for professional development as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's just talk about Learning Blade for a couple of minutes and why this is important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we know across the country and certainly here in Florida that the demand for STEM, computer science, career tech workers is growing. I think Kathleen's going to share with us. She's at an event in Jacksonville with 800 tech people, you know, and the importance of making sure we're filling that pipeline and getting individuals ready for STEM and computer science CTE careers is really important. And one thing, particularly for all my CTE friends out there, you know, this isn't just about 4-year degrees. This is also about 2-year certificate programs. Those can lead to great careers that really can bring students and individuals into a really great life. And so we always want to make sure we talk about that. Women and minorities are underrepresented. We want to make sure you work with them as well. And really the main reason that we're doing Learning Blade is this chart on the right, where we actually looked at students who actually were proficient in math, but weren't interested in STEM. So you could see where, you know, they're good math skills and they're interested, fine, off they go. But there is a very big pool of candidates who actually have some decent math skills, but aren't interested in STEM. So just, you know, I usually like to ask this with so many people, I won't sort of open it up, but I would like to say that, you know, the one thing that we recognize is why, or we wanted to understand was why were kids not interested in STEM? And it's almost such a simple answer. The number one reason they're not interested in, they just don't know about it. It's almost so simple. And what we have done, you know, so much of our educational system is just about, you know, kind of getting kids into college, and we're not doing a lot to expose students to careers at an early enough age where they can actually change that trajectory of where they're going. So middle school also happens to be that critical time where kids are making their career related decisions. Now, this doesn't mean they're picking their exact career, but the math class they take, the things they do after school, who they hang around, all of that leads in and bakes that into their future pathway. This was further validated by 42% of Americans said they would have considered STEM courses if they better understood the career path. I'm sure you guys are familiar, or many of you would be familiar, just to give you a little history about Dana and myself, we are the creators of Learning Blade. A little bit about our background. You might have heard of the Florida Work Ready effort that has been going on in Florida for many years. And it is based on ACT's Work Keys assessment, which really is the predictor of how students are going to do in the work world, the same way the ACT test predicts how they're going to do in college. We were actually the creators of the national curriculum for that, Key Train and Career Ready 101, and that was acquired by ACT about 10 years ago from us. Dana and I are both engineers, and really we went back to the drawing board to say, you know, how could we better support that future workforce? And that is the reason that we created Learning Blade, was really to help that piece, because we understood that skills gap existed at a higher level, but we knew what we were facing with Learning Blade was an interest gap. And so that is what Learning Blade is all designed to do. Now, what is Learning Blade? So we really designed missions, what we call missions, which really allow students to receive contextualized learning that really will show them the different careers. But we knew at the same time we needed to give something for teachers. So it's about reinforcing academic standards and providing resources that, quite frankly, any teacher can do. You know, I think we all know in this country, we're asking teachers to do everything for our students. And, you know, the more things that we can give them in their toolbox allows them to be better at their job. And so that is one of the things that we did with Learning Blade. So for the format of it, we call these missions. We have 12 different missions. They include a wide range of careers and technologies. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at everything from manufacturing to biotech to agriculture. We've got to feed the earth. Of course, a lot of computer science, lightweight metals, transportation, you know, all the things you would see out in sort of a STEM workplace. But we also decided that we wanted to contextualize the learning for students so that it would mean something to them. We could make it meaningful. And so we actually created kind of a challenge or a societal challenge for each of those. You know, our students today really want to have an impact in society. And so, you know, we wanted to show them how these different careers actually impact society. So you can see the challenge, or really the theme of our 12 different missions. Now, for each of our missions, we have this entire set of what we call our toolbox of lessons and activities. Our central component is our interactive online lessons. And Dane's going to take you into the system in a little bit, and you'll be able to see those. But there's over 400 of those. aligned to all the current Florida standards. Beyond that, we also have project-based learning lesson plans. Now, what's unique about our lesson plans, and there are a lot of project-based learning, great resources out there, but a lot of them require you to buy extra equipment, and a lot of times expensive equipment to do it. In our parlay, what we decided was, let's create some project-based lessons that will allow teachers to do those lessons with their students using common materials you find in the classroom. So for example, if you're teaching force, you can use pencils, pennies, and rulers. You don't have to have expensive scales and weights in order to actually communicate this kind of idea. So that has been very well received across the country. Additionally, our design thinking, we thought it was important. We didn't want kids to just regurgitate. We wanted them to ideate, innovate. So we use a 5-step creative design thinking process to allow students to sort of start looking at the problem within the mission to see if there are other ways to solve it. Our parent lessons, ESSA required parent engagement. So we created these parent lessons that students can actually go home, do with their parents, even have a table topic conversation at their table, even if their parents have zero background in STEM, computer science, or CTE. They can then actually do a little research on their phone and then do an at-home experiment. Again, we're just giving more resources out there to be utilized. Career videos show obviously a day in the life, a little bit about the salaries and other things that you might expect. Our 3D printing, now this is a little bit different than our other other resources, because you do have to have a 3D printer. And of course, one thing we saw is a lot of schools and classrooms getting 3D printers and sitting in the back of the classroom with a blanket over it, because teachers really didn't know exactly how to integrate it into learning. So they may print a paperweight or something like that. So we created a 3D printing sort of exercise for each of our 12 missions. And what it does, it gives the individuals, the students, an object. Then they can use Thingiverse or Tinkercad, free online resources, to modify it. Then they can print it, and then they can use it in an experiment. So it's soup to nuts and additive manufacturing. And as we know today, manufacturing is not our grandfather's manufacturing. It's clean, it's high tech, it's a growing space, and we've got to do a better job of filling that. We have 600,000 open manufacturing jobs right now. Our intro to coding, I'll talk about in a minute. It's really taken off, because obviously we all know we live in a digital economy. We all need a little coding. And then we are talking about middle schoolers. So we do have what we call our paper crafts, which are a little reward system where students will receive a way to print out and build a little origami figure. So before I get too far, I do want to turn it over to Kathleen Scofield. We have been working with Dr. Scofield in STEM 2 Hub for a number of years. And I'm safe to say there are very few STEM leaders that I see across the country that have her dynamic personality and ability to actually get things done. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you, Kathleen.
Wow, Sheila, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm Kathy Scofield. I met some of you at the event at Blue Origin, and I'm really here just to tell you a little about my experience with Learning Blade and some of the data that we've recently collected. First and foremost, I'm one of you. I came from Clay County schools. I started the STEM and computer science programs there. And that was where I first met Learning Blade. And we started a really small pilot there, and the relationship was wonderful. The team was so responsive to providing essentially on-demand professional development for our teachers as they needed it. So of course, when I moved over to the STEM 2 Hub, my goal was to spread Learning Blade in my region as far as I could. And so it's thrilling to me that we have seen this now come to an offering for the whole state. Why Learning Blade? Number one, the students are engaged. The students love the resource. It is fully aligned, cross-curricular, and really helps kids learn about those careers before they're making those critical choices of what academies might they be interested in, or possibly what career might they choose. Learning Blade lets them see all the careers or variations in a pathway. You don't have to be the rocket scientist or the astronaut. You learn about everything up that continuum. So kids start to see their identity build. Also, we have done in our region over the past 6 years, oh boy, hundreds of thousands of lessons by tens of thousands of students. And the data which comes out of the use of the curriculum shows that students are understanding relevancy of things such as math and reading and why it is important in their future careers. Their career awareness is growing, as is their interest in these careers. We further, with one of our smaller districts, did a study this past year with the Pear Institute out of Harvard Medical Center, and we looked at 10 indicators of interest in STEM particularly, and resiliency, meaning critical thinking, problem solving, and ability to apply these in their other subjects. We looked at 10 indicators and we hit a statistically significant growth in all 10 indicators. We've been able to look at that now across gender, across ethnicity, and we're seeing that with Learning Blade as a pinnacle piece of the curriculum that we're using in middle school in that district, we are seeing that kind of growth, and that data to me validates the data that we're getting directly from Learning Blade. So I am seeing the data points are matching up. It's just absolutely thrilling to me to be able to see this now be offered by the adoption through the budget for all of you. And I also consider myself to be a resource to any one of you who cares to reach out. I put my email address in the chat, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of this implementation. So Sheila, back to you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, and thank you for your tremendous leadership, as well as to your wonderful board chair, Gary Chartrand, who has done a lot to support STEM across the state as well. And so we've really enjoyed working with both of you, and, you know, really admire all that work.
Well, thank you.
Yes, of course. So definitely want to also highlight, you know, the fact that Perkins 5 does now include this statement. This was actually added just I think three or 4 years ago. And what Perkins 5 says now is that 135B1 says you need to provide career exploration, career development activities in an organized, systematic framework designed to aid students, including the middle grades. I tell everybody, I think this was written for Learning Blade because we launched Learning Blade about 10 years ago, and this wasn't there. And I think there's a heightened recognition to the importance of career really exposure. In fact, Microsoft did a study, did not involve Learning Blade, but it did show that as little as 2.5 hours of career exposure could actually change a student's career trajectory. So I think the important thing here is to understand that, you know, we're offering this now. It's available in a nice package for you all to do. Learning Blade is a supplemental system. So, you know, we're not intending to usurp or replace anything that you're already doing academically, but it's a great resource to sort of integrate STEM, computer science, CTE in kind of this game-based platform that you get to see. It is easily accessible via the internet. We do have, as I mentioned, those downloadable teacher resources as well. But a little bit different than other STEM resources that you might see is we don't include just science, math. We also include English and social studies, because just because you're good in social studies does not mean you shouldn't consider a career in a STEM high demand growing field. We also are really cognitive of making sure we want to contribute to the classroom, as we mentioned. And so we are aligned to the current academic state standards to really show students the relevance of what they're learning. We address really grade levels 5 through 9. Our sweet spots are definitely 6th, 7th, and 8th, what we consider the real middle grades. But for 5th grade, sometimes it's good for your gifted programs, for 9th grade, for RTI, for other things like that as well. It can be utilized. And again, even though we are saying middle schools, we have no problem with using it in elementary or high schools as well if you deem it appropriate. So this is a sample of what one of our missions looks like. Now, this happens to be our Dolphin Rescue. I think that has the most applicability here in Florida. Everybody loves dolphins. And what you see here is the orange circles are what we call our STEM technologies, and we call them tools. And our green circles are our STEM careers, and we call those teammates. So students earn the tool or the teammate by completing these mini academic lessons. These are 10 to 15-minute lessons for our twinner generation. And they actually, you can see they address certain things: English, science, social studies, and math. And when students earn the tool or the teammate, they get some points, and we have sort of a gaming-based aspect to this. But really, it's great because our goal, again, is to introduce students to something they may have never heard of before. So if they don't have anyone in their life that has been in a STEM or computer science CT career, they're not necessarily going to get exposed to this. And we're going to expose to students far and wide with this resource and your utilization of it. This hack attack happens to be our cybersecurity one, which again, allows students to see what, is talked about when we talk about cloud computing or web developers or UI UX designers. A lot of people don't even know what that means. And so again, we're trying to show students what these resources, what these type of careers are. So there've been very few people, besides definitely Kathleen, but teachers and educators who have utilized Learning Blade in the way that Brandy has. Brandy Krisovich, who has been with Duval County for many years, and they've been using Learning Blade for many of the last so many years, has been an amazing champion for students that she has had. And now she's at the district level, so influencing from a different way, but it's my pleasure to introduce to you Brandy.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Yeah, so we've been using Learning Blade in our classrooms, and I've been using it in the classroom. It was a great way when I was a new teacher to the classroom and teaching in the computer science pathway to introduce the students to a bunch of different concepts and vocabularies, but also to introduce them to a day in the life of what these people in these different career fields do. So often, especially when we're talking to our middle school kids who really are making those decisions upon which direction they want to go in their career, where they might want to choose to go to high school, did they know they had a choice? And the careers at that age seem to be just those basic lawyer, doctor, teacher, fireman, policeman. There's no understanding of all of the other opportunities that are out there. And Learning Blade really does a good job of taking these different missions, which are really stories, and like the students really relate to them. Hack Attack that we just saw was one that starts off with the story that your school has been hacked, and your school is also in a robotics competition, and they can't access the files, and how does this work? Who are the people that would be involved in helping to fix this or prevent these sort of things from happening? What are their job titles? What does their career look like? What kind of tools or skills are needed to do well in those areas and in those career fields? And it spells it out for them in this sort of storytelling manner that the kids, like I said, can relate to. And that gets them thinking about the different types of opportunities that are out there. The other missions that they're exposed to, not only like introduce them to vocabulary for the different career industries, but also help them to understand the different pathways and the skills that are needed, and really bring it to real life where they can see that this is what we're doing and this is why. Some of the lessons where they do interact across curriculum, the math component of it I really like, and I think resonates most with students, especially those students that want to know, why do I need to learn this, and where will I ever use this in my life and my career? So as they're going through some of the missions and they come to the math portion, some of them are challenging math problems, but that's okay, because what the student is seeing then, while they may not have gotten to that in their instruction of math yet and have any idea, they at least are exposed to, this is the kind of algebra you're going to need, or this is the calculus or the formulas. And so while they haven't learned that yet, when they are sitting in that math class and they know that I need to understand this if I want to go into biotechnology or biomedicine, and they see that in math, they're going to be better engaged, because then they know I should pay attention to this because this is something that I know is in the field in which I want to pursue. So it helps to make that real life bridge to why they're learning what they're learning in the school day. Another thing I'll say about using Learning Blade in the classroom from the teacher perspective is that it's very intuitive. It's very easy to log into the platform, to take a look at the platform, and to use the resources. So not only are there the missions that the students can read these stories, and there's a good amount of reading, which is fantastic with its immersive reader. It also allows the students to to practice that reading comprehension, those areas that we know that we need to continue to have our students reading to be able to grow in proficiency there. So as they're reading through that, there are also several resources for the teacher that really brings out the project-based learning activities and the design thinking activities. So those are great for those students to get hands-on activities, which is what they love to do at that age, and still make it relatable to all these different career clusters and the standards of which you're teaching. So in my pathway, I was computer science. So we looked a lot more at the Hackattack for like ICT1, for digital discoveries, there's rescue robots, the computer science components, the computational thinking with the design projects and the project-based activities is all there, and it reinforces all of those standards. But we've also been adding in the state of Florida a course called Orientation to Career Clusters. So when I was putting that together for our teachers and looking for resources, I had to look no further than Learning Blade. The Orientation to Career Clusters course for the state of Florida covers all 17 of those career clusters, and Learning Blade's missions cover all of those standards. And they kind of mix it up too. So if you're looking at the energy cluster and they have the energy mission, you can see it's not just learning about those in that energy cluster, but what else is involved, from communications to soft skills to working together, and the different tools that are involved there as well. The resources are very well done, and I think Dane's going to show you what that looks like. The teacher doesn't have to have a whole lot of background knowledge. We don't all know everything about everything, but they're set up in a way that if you're going to have the students participate in a project, there are videos embedded in the lesson plans that teachers can look and see, how should this look in my classroom? How should I set this up? How do I know that this is working? What are the students supposed to get from it? And the same thing with the design thinking, going through that iteration and figuring out how they're going to solve these different problems using these same missions. The 3D printing is a fantastic aspect of it too. And again, the teacher does not have to have a whole background in it. Their STL files are there for you. And like Sheila said, you can easily import those into free platforms where the students can then change that up and make their own design from what's already there. So it really is empowering to the students as well. I don't know if there's any more you want me to cover about that.
No, that sounds great. I mean, okay. I think I could let you do the rest of it. You're doing a great job. But
give Dan a chance, yeah.
Well, thank you, Brandy. And, I think you're hearing, like, from a user, which I think is very valuable for, you as educators to be able to hear from someone that has actually used the system in a classroom. And just thank you, Brandy, for all you do for students too, for sure, in Duval, and now helping us to share the story. So just to go back to a little bit of nuts and bolts. So this is kind of what the mission dashboard looks like, where students are either able to select one of those 12 missions, or teachers can actually assign a specific mission depending on the topics that you're covering. As Brandy mentioned, some things fit better with certain content, etc. Then once they select a mission, we have a couple of choices. We have an express mission, which takes about 1.5 to 2 hours. Or we have a full mission, which can take 8 to 10 hours. And you can see the students can pick from the tool or the teammate, and they'll be able to then track their use. And of course, we have some of those gaming aspects down here. Learning Blade really is introducing kids to careers, but at the same time, as we mentioned, we want to be reviewing academics. And so that's kind of happening on the back end. Students aren't really totally aware of that. And so we are using interactivity and excitement to kind of engage students, but we are reviewing those academic standards. And what we do then with the back end of this is we have a learning management system that actually tracks how students are performing on each individual question. And this can be really powerful for our teachers that want to find out, how their students are performing. What's great is we do have the Florida standards in here as well. And the search bar here is really cool because you can actually put in a standard number, or you can put in a keyword, and it will bring up all the activities and lessons that address that particular standard. So that's some superpower for the system. I always like to say, you know, these resources are there, but you don't have to do all of those things to get value out of Learning Blade. You know, this is our first year here in Florida. I saw someone ask the question about that. You know, this is our first year here in Florida. Obviously, we hope to stay here for a long time. But as I mentioned too, there is also an intro to coding course. One of the things that we've seen across the country, and I think Florida's not any different, you know, this heightened awareness of sort of putting some middle school computer science efforts in there. The state of Arkansas really saw this as a need, and they worked with us. We've been working with Arkansas for a number of years, and we collaborated together on creating this middle school intro to coding course. Now, this is a little bit about text-based, block-based coding and other things like that, because we do live in a digital society. And so many states are sort of starting to require some
I'll take him.
computer science. And so that's what we're able to do. And so in our intro to coding, we have the block-based coding, and then we do the progression all the way to text-based coding. And so this can be very powerful for teachers to be able that have really very little background in computer science to be able to utilize with their students and give them a robust experience. The other thing we're very happy to announce too is that our Intro to Coding PD is accredited by CSTA for quality PD as well. So when individuals are going through that, they can also get this certificate that can apply toward their professional development hours too. We do have a very exciting thing as well. One of the things we try to do is encourage use, of course, but one of the things we do is doing that by awarding some drones. They're really cool new tele-drones. We actually have lessons within Learning Blade that tells you how to use them. Imagine that. And for schools that complete 5,000 online lessons, and this is quite achievable, you can ask Brandy, she has won this before, during this school year, they will receive a free drone from us. And so just, you know, just another way to kind of work with schools, encourage them, get them to engage in utilizing a great resource. This is one of the things that we do. As I mentioned, we have been working with many other states. We're actually in our 8th year in Arkansas, our 9th year in Tennessee. So we have longevity. I will say where we start, we don't leave. So excited to be able to work here in Florida and really see the way that you guys implement this over the next year or so. I did see a question about Zello. I'm familiar with them. STEM Premier was their previous name. You know, they're a little bit different than us. They're not really doing content specific to careers and then academics, et cetera. They're really doing more of the career sort of planning of what college and other things you're going to. So that we're very complementary. I think it's good for students to have an opportunity to do Learning Blade in middle school and then gradually go into Zello as they go higher. One thing is we have not rested on our laurels and just sort of thrown this out there and hope for the best. We've really been trying to work to make sure we do some pre and post testing and we see how students' attitudes are changing. We work with Battelle, largest nonprofit research institution in the country. And as we have seen, these are some data points that we've gotten, that 55% increase in kids strongly agreeing they're now interested in career in computer science, doubling the number of kids are interested in becoming an engineer or scientist. My personal favorite data is the 69% increase in students recognizing what I learned in school will be useful later in life. Relevance. I mean, that's what we're all about, right? I mean, that's education. Independent ED thesis also found similar data, studied schools that use Learning Blade. Those that didn't, again, came back with similar things. 59% more likely to be interested in career in STEM, 140% more likely to now say they know what STEM workers do. You can't be what you can't see. So really important in that. So I'm going to stop there. If there are questions, happy to answer those in the chat. And I'm going to turn it over to Dane, who's going to actually take you into a live tour of Learning Blade.
Thank you, Sheila. Appreciate that. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you what it actually looks like in real practice. So what I'm going to do is log in as a student user into the system. And so here, when you do it, and Sheila showed a brief image of this earlier, this is where you see those different missions, those different stories that you talked about. Now, teachers can customize this screen for specific classes. So if you want a specific class to show only 1 or 2 of these missions, you can do that. And she also mentioned that we have both a full-length version and an express-length version of each mission. So depending on whether you really want to focus in on this career cluster, or you want students to get a little snippet of different career clusters before they settle in one that they want to look on and do more research on, that can sort of guide whether you use the full mission or the express mission. And as she mentioned, there is a dashboard that you students use to actually execute the mission. So this is the dashboard for something we call the flu outbreak. And on here you see, the tools, which are technologies, and the teammates, which are careers, which would help solve the problem that they do in this mission. And as they start working through this mission, there'll be a mission score down here at the bottom that will go from 0 to 100. And as they start completing the tools and teammates, you'll see progress bars down here. But what happens when they actually start this for the first time? I've been in this before, of course. When they start it for the first time, they're going to see a video which sort of sets out the problem that they're trying to solve in this particular mission. So this one sets out a problem where you're actually watching your friend's social media. So if you're looking at your friend's social media, in this case, this social media feed is blowing up with all this girl's friends getting sick. And you start asking, well, why has this happened? What can we do about this? Now, take it, we wrote this about 7 or 8 years ago, but you already see from the title where we might be heading. And so the idea was we were actually trying to attack the problem of big data. How do we explain big data to students? And we thought to ourselves, we could talk about how big data is used to track flu outbreaks. So this is something we actually did. Reminded, this was written about 7 or 8 years ago. I'm gonna skip through the video a little bit. You'll get a little bit of idea, but I won't spend the whole time watching that.
Your morning begins just like most others. Scanning the apps on your phone, you checked in to see how your friends were doing. In the same area, college using computer models to predict medical trends. Social media allows people to share information about their lives. It might be the perfect source of information to predict health trends. She says that GIS data could be the key in predicting the spread of diseases. It's taking the gathered information and using computers to turn it into useful data. You ask how much information will post. That's a lot of data, you reply. After trends have been identified, the most important information will need to be stored. A database administrator would be the best to project. The professor's part involves translating this work into results. Live and work will show you understand those patterns. After identifying patterns of behavior, you'll need to determine how they and how to prevent spreading. Once the likely ways a disease could spread have been identified, a process is needed to counteract the sickness.
So you get the idea of this. The idea is that we're going to gather data through social media and GIS. We're going to enlist the help of computer programmers, database administrators, statisticians to help us understand that. And of course, the result of this was, guess what? A new vaccine. So, okay, we all know that story, and we didn't even know what this picture was 7 or 8 years ago. But of course, unfortunately, we all know that too well now. But the point was, we were using this to explain the concept of what database administrators do. So we'll talk about database administrators, and we'll talk about things like, for instance, if we're working with a database administrator and we have gathered information on patients. So let's say we have gathered, and I'm going to skip through this a little bit to talk about this. We've gathered some table of patient information. So we have different patients, and for each patient, we have things like their age and their symptoms and their temperature and things like this. How do we organize this data? What do we do in reality? Well, we'll then actually talk about organizing specific pieces of information into records that identify each entity, and we'll group those into tables of different records, and we'll group a set of tables together into something called a database. And so we'll actually help students understand this, and we'll help them visualize this different ways. So we'll talk about these fields. And so, a database is the top level, and a database contains tables, and inside the tables, there are records. Inside the table, there are records, and inside records, there are fields. And so that will help us to understand how we can do that. And we'll actually go through and talk about the idea of relational tables and related tables, how they're connected together. And we'll discuss how database administrators on a day-to-day basis help to organize and work with information, these type of structures. So the point is that we're relating this back to patient information, but we're also relating it to a technology of relational databases. And we're really talking about, as we go through this lesson, we'll talk about how the day-to-day work of database administrators will actually help to manage this data. So this is just one example of how we take a social problem and we reduce it down to a specific career, and we reduce it down to the technologies that that career would use to actually solve this particular problem. Let's look at one that I particularly like because we're from this area. But you know, the idea of prosthetics and helping animals is something that's very popular in middle school, especially with girls. They're very sympathetic with this type of issue. So if we talk about, for instance, helping this injured dolphin, and this is in fact Winter the dolphin from Clearwater, and we talk about how we can use prosthetics to help injured animals. So we'll talk about biomedical engineers and how biomedical engineers will create prosthetics and how they'll work through that information. But we'll also talk about the process of actually designing what we call artificial limbs of prosthetics. So Brandy and Sheila talked about how we make this interdisciplinary. So we talk about not just science and math here, we talk about the history of prosthetics, and we'll have a lesson on that, which relates to social studies and how it was invented in Egypt. We'll talk about whether should amputees with prosthetics compete in normal sporting events. So we have a lesson about that, where they organize pieces of information to a pro paragraph and a con paragraph, but each paragraph has a thesis statement, supporting details, and a conclusion statement. So you really learn something about paragraph structure when you do this. We'll talk about measuring people prosthetics, but we'll also talk about designing prosthetics. And how do we do that? And how does that relate to science? So when we look at this, we'll have a lesson here which talks about if you're going to design an artificial limb such as this leg, you have to understand the forces involved. How do we do that? When we make a case actually that if you understand simple machines, that will help you to understand these forces. So I'm going to click through this a little bit quickly, but we're not really sure the student's going to have been exposed to simple machines. So we are going to spend a little time to explain those, present a couple examples. For instance, a playground slide, an example of an inclined plane, and a crowbar is an example of a lever. And so now we can talk about, if you had a simple forearm, a simple mechanical arm, which machine would this most be like? Now we're going to contend that this is like a lever because your forearm rotates around your elbow like a lever rotates around a fulcrum. So now we can talk about levers. We can talk about how levers balance forces at a distance from the fulcrum. We can represent this as a mathematical algebraic expression. And now we can start to ask some interesting questions. So if you had a weight in your hand and your muscle's attached a certain distance from your elbow joint, how hard does this muscle have to pull to lift this weight? What we will do is go through a quantitative example of this, and then we'll have students solve some problems. So as we go through this, you know, the student may select a certain answer, but if they select an incorrect answer, we'll give them some corrective feedback to help them understand the problem. But if they select a correct answer, we'll give them obviously positive feedback. If they get it correct, they'll get gold stars down here at the bottom for solving these answers. Now, every time we go through this, we will explain the answer on the next page, and you may have seen that already in some of our previous, the previous lesson we're in. So we will always explain the answer. We will demonstrate it, have them do a problem, explain the answer. We will reward them with gold stars if they're complete. And as I get to the end of this lesson, if I got all the way to the end of this, I would actually get a score. And I previously completed this with a score of 83. Now, as I go through and complete these different lessons, it will add points to my mission. So my actual mission score will start going up as I go through this and complete more and more of these lessons. So with that score, I can start asking questions, such if I have my career awareness class, such as you do in Florida, I can say, well, how are my students doing in this particular dolphin rescue mission? Now I'm logged in as Dane Boynton. I can see that I'm currently in third in my class. Now, these are imaginary students. This is not a real class. But as a teacher, I would see exactly all these students' names. And so I would see how all the students in my class are doing this particular mission. But I can also group students into teams and have team 1 against team 2, or the team Patriots against the Falcons, or whatever you want to call them, and have team competition or competition between classes if you so choose to make that available to students. In addition, instead of thinking about these simply as missions, which are sort of stories, but the lessons are sort of independent and can be used independently, I can assign very specific lessons depending on whether I'm an English teacher or a math teacher or a science teacher. or I can base it on more content. So let's say, okay, I'm studying electricians. I'm studying electricity in the science lab. Well, I can assign the lessons associated with the career of electrician. So we can talk about the day in the life of an electrician, or the history lesson of how Edison versus Tesla competed to figure out what's going to come out of our wall sockets. But they also learn about AC/DC current, or what uses the most energy in our home. So you can talk about energy in your home, but you also learn about the difference between volts and watts while you're doing that. Or if you're doing, building a bridge and you're, out of straws and marshmallows, we can talk about civil engineers and the difference between arch and truss bridges and things like that. So it can be used as independent lessons, depending on the particular science concept or other academic concept you want to focus on. Of course, we also have, as Sheila mentioned, a wide range of materials available to the teacher. So if I log in as a teacher, now I can actually keep track of how my different classes are doing here with charts. I can keep track of all my students in the system. So I would have actually a list of students here. And of course, I can also keep track of my classes. And this is a full-featured learning management system. So I have on my different classes here, I can actually pull a report and see how different classes are doing. So I can say my career awareness class and pull a report, and I can see how individual students are doing in this class, which students are most active. I can see that how many activities have been completed. And then different tabs, I can get scores by lesson, scores by mission, scores by career. I can download these and things like that. But more importantly, or additionally important, I have all these other activities that Sheila talked about in the toolbox for the Dolphin Rescue mission, for the Energy Sources mission. I have a full suite of materials. If I go look at some of these materials, I have, for instance, mission challenges, which are really a group of 4 different activities, a group presentation, convincing local university to create an animal rescue center, a writing assignment, write a journal article, and these differ from mission to mission, but in this case, write a journal entry in the persona of one of those careers, or I would have the ability to actually do some simple experiments. So I can have them make simple models of prosthetics using very simple materials. We have a little bit of a video to demonstrate this. We have an example of how you can do this for the dolphin's tail, and they can create other ones for different animals. Or we have some simple experiments like doing levers with pencils and pennies and rulers and doing the calculations and sort of convincing yourself that this concept really works. But of course, we want them to be able to think about how to solve the problem. So we also have the design thinking lessons, and these are available for each of the missions. This is one of our construction careers one about designing an orphanage for students that are left homeless after an earthquake or hurricane. And so we'll actually have them look over some videos. So we talked about in this, we'd have them talk about things like green energy, make it energy efficient. We had them talk about how in Haiti, which was the prompt for this particular lesson, this is a real life story, about how they're building back some homes that didn't look particularly safe. Then we'll have them select their own problem, or you're building in an area that has unreliable electric service, you're building in an area that has issues with fresh water or hurricanes. Go through this, think about what you want to solve, and then go through a 5-step design thinking process. And we'll have them with some little sheets you can hand out and sort of go through this 5-step design thinking process, create your notes, and have each group do a presentation. We have things, as Sheila mentioned, to send home with students and for them to talk about at home. How will your life be different without electricity? This is our energy career, our energy mission. How could you save energy in your own home? Do different investigation on renewable energy, build a windsock out of a grocery sack, a very simple activity. Brandy mentioned, I believe, she liked the 3D printing. We have things where in manufacturing, we talk about car manufacturing. You can actually take this model then and go online, and students can actually do whatever they want with this model. And so they can take the preloaded model that we have, and they can take this model and actually go through with Tinkercad and make any modifications they want to this model at all. But we've preloaded it already, but we're going to make them make some decisions about the tires. We're going to make them decide on how wide and what diameter they are. And so they can actually decide that and do some experiments with these cars down an inclined plane and see how they work. We also have a full suite of coding activities. And so we can actually go through and have an entire course on this and sort of guide you through the prospects of how you would actually explain computers to students, how you can have some discussion questions. And so we have online lessons, but they also have offline activities, such as this game where you actually place markers out on the floor and you have students write instructions. One student writes instructions for another student about how to move through the markers, and then they test that code. We also have a full lesson plan on how you can teach students to code a simple game. And so we actually have step-by-step how you can explain this. And then you would do this actually online using a site called Pencil Code. And you would start off with just drawing simple shapes and how you would draw simple shapes with a few lines of code. You actually work through our lesson plan up to the point of actually having them write a simple game where, in this case, you're using your arrow keys to guide this little green turtle through, finding these other turtles, sending them back to base. And when you do, you win the game. But it has all the aspects of setting up a game board, having chance, responding to user input, monitoring conditions, monitoring for a condition where you achieve the game. So a lot of different activities and things you can do that, designing your own pretend phone app. We have lesson plans for that. So I hope this explains to you some of the activities we have available. I know we're getting short on time. We'd love to answer any questions, but hope this gives you a little idea of what we're doing with Learning Blade. Sheila, you're on mute.
Somebody has to say that once on every call. Somebody's on mute. Well, and we do want to wrap up a little bit by also sharing with you a little bit about our teacher data, because obviously we talked a lot about the students, but our teachers are also big fans. I think you heard from Brandy as well, and certainly others in Kathleen's area who have been this, but really find Learning Blade easy to use, help students visualize themselves in these careers, provides useful hands-on projects. We love hearing from teachers. And we really look forward to working with the schools across Florida. This is available for any organization, any school that works with 5 through 9. And so you could sign up for the free account at learningblade.com/FL. You will then receive your account from us. And then you also can send us any times that you might have that you want professional development training actually at your district. If we do have enough people attending, Ned can come to your district as well. We have others as well that are helping with Florida, but you could just email us at info@learningblade.com. You will also, once you sign up for an account or your school sign up for an account, the following week, they will receive an email Monday through Friday. We're not going to send them every week, but just that first week, so that they get some ideas of all the different resources that are in Learning Blade. So they understand a little bit about the online lessons, but they also hear a little bit about the teacher lesson plans around our what we call our mission challenges, which are project-based learning, our design thinking, our 3D printing, those kind of things, as well as, of course, our intro to coding, which quite frankly, last year was really popular. Many states are kind of building, a lot of things that they're doing for middle schools and around coding and intro to coding. So pretty excited for you all to do that as well. We are recording this presentation, so everyone that is attending will be getting a copy of this as well. We're happy to do this presentation for others. Please tell your friends, superintendents, the CD directors, curriculum, etc. Please tell your friends. And I did want to give Paul a shout out. He did say, don't forget about USF Bulls. I know I took a chemistry class there when I was in the summer, so I'm very familiar with that as well. So I want to be equal opportunity here. All the great schools, Florida's certainly blessed with a lot of them. And then again, thank you to FADS. Thank you to Kathleen and to Brandy. Kathleen, STEM 2 Hub's been really a model of what can happen with the STEM organization. And then of course, Brandy is just an amazing person teaching students in Duval County. And I know you guys are gonna love what you have with Learning Blade. We're here to help you, to support you. We don't want you to want for anything when you're looking at that. And so if there's any way we can help you, feel free to email us at info@learningblade.com. And if there aren't any other questions in the chat, we'll give you back a few minutes of your day. I'm sure it's pretty crazy right now as school has started. And thanks again, everybody.